Episode 3, Balance of Power, may well have one of my favourite concepts for an episode. Lister, growing tired of Rimmer pulling rank on him, seeks to take the officer's exam in order to technically become a higher ranked officer than Rimmer. This episode's narrative is comparatively simpler and smaller in scale than the end and featurette goes, but it utilises the strained relationship between Rimmer and Lister to produce arguably one of the funniest episodes of the series. The conflict between the two begins with Lister lamenting the loss of Christine Kochanski, urging Rimmer to switch off his own hologram and briefly replace it with hers, so that the two would be better able to spend some time together. Rimmer fears that Lister will never turn him back on, and thus Lister opts to take the officer's exam in order to maintain a higher rank than Rimmer, meaning that he would have final say on who the hologram would be on Red Dwarf. Rimmer initially is not seriously worried about Lister's prospects of passing the exam, but upon discovering that Lister is in fact taking the chef's exam, which would technically result in him being a higher ranked officer than Rimmer, he seeks to prevent Lister from doing so. The wonderful irony in this present is that, with the rest of the crew dead and the system of order and rank that Rimmer so firmly believes in ceasing to matter in the process, Rimmer's superior position of command is largely meaningless to Lister. As we see in The End, he only ever obeyed his orders because of the consequences imposed by that system if he were to disobey. Lister is entirely aware that the title of chef is essentially meaningless to him. But it is of course immensely important to Rimmer, an individual who prides himself on his superior status and rank, who firmly believes in the militaristic order embodied by the ship's system of rank. I would argue that the comedic gold the episode mines from Rimmer's incessant, pathetic attempts to win Lister over are emphasised by the fact that Rimmer would, inevitably, always obey a superior officer, no matter who the officer or no matter what he was ordered to do. This is something that is directly acknowledged by Lister towards the end of the episode.
That's only the beginning, Rimmer. When I pass the exams and become an officer, you'll be on latrines. You'll have the 3 o'clock watch every morning. I know you'll obey me because you respect all that officer smeg.
Which is why, as fantastic as the lingering ambiguity at the end of the episode is, wherein Lister declares to have passed the chef's exam and has successfully become Rimmer's superior officer.
How did you do, Lister?
How did I do, Mr. Lister, sir?
I think that this question is ultimately answered by their dynamic remaining unchanged in later episodes. Rimmer, desperate to believe that he is a man of honour and integrity, would simply be unable to disobey a commanding officer, despite the substantial blow to his ego. With that being said, however, I think the conclusion here is far funnier if left ambiguous, simply because it is more open to discussion and interpretation. Of course, Holly calls Lister's bluff at the beginning of Waiting for God, confirming that Lister did not, in fact, pass the chef's exam.
The most interesting event that happened recently was that Lister pretended he'd passed the chef's exam, although really he failed. That gives you some idea of how truly exciting some days can be around here.
Admittedly, I do believe that the episode is at its weakest when it steps outside of the conflict between Lister and Rimmer that drives this episode's best moments. There are still some very well realised moments of comedy here, including the cat's encounter with the food dispensary.
Hello, how can I help you?
Fish.
Today's fish is trout à la crème. Enjoy your meal.
Fish.
Today's fish is trout à la crème. Enjoy your meal.
Fish.
Today's fish is trout à la crème. Enjoy your meal.
And a sequence which perhaps intentionally channels a similar scene in Sam Raimi's blood-soaked horror comedy masterpiece Evil Dead 2. Rimmer's arm being replaced with the former crew member Peterson's, who then attempts to attack Rimmer. Barry's penchant for physical comedy is not quite as strong as Bruce Campbell's, but the sequence bears such a striking similarity to the scene in that movie that it's entirely possible that this may function as a loving homage to that film. This episode was aired a year after the release of that film, so this certainly could be the case.
Groovy.
This is also the first episode that features a major appearance from Christine Kochanski, who is in these early seasons portrayed by Claire Grogan. She does appear briefly in The End, but I decided to bring her up here in order to make a larger point about the way in which the show handles its supporting characters. It was somewhat bracing to rediscover that, despite the desolate atmosphere of loneliness and isolation that hangs over these early episodes, Every single episode in Season 1 features a supporting or guest character, even outside of Holly and the cat. The End has Lister's crewmate, Future Echoes has Talkie the Toaster.
You can't sing, you know.
And you can you?
Oh, just because I'm a toaster, I'm tone deaf.
Well, go on then.
Welcome to the Starlight Ballroom. Hey, fly me to the moon and let me.
Balance of Power features Christine Kochanski, albeit puppeteered by Rimmer, who simply appears as Lister as Kochanski in order to manipulate him. Waiting for God features the Cat Priest and Talkie Toaster again. Confident and Paranoia has the titular Confident and Paranoia, and Me Squared throws another Rimmer into the mix. Admittedly, that last one may be cheating, but I'd argue that the second Rimmer is distinct enough in manner and personality to the original to merit his mention here. It's very easy to dismiss Lister's cosmic loneliness on account of these varied characters, but ultimately, none of these characters are people, human beings that Lister can converse with or relate to. Talkie is a machine. Kochanski is simply Rimmer, who is himself a hologram, a digital recreation of Rimmer. The Cat Priest is, like the cat, not human, and ultimately dies at the conclusion of that episode. Confidence and Paranoia are the physical manifestations of emotions, and the second Rimmer in Me Squared is no more human than the first. And this, to me, is far more horrifying to comprehend than Lister simply being on his own in deep space. The figures who appear to him are caricatures of humanity. They look, act, and talk like humans, but there ultimately is little humanity to be found. These are shadows designed to torment him, remind him of his perpetual loneliness. He sees those who are almost human, who may relieve his feeling of isolation, but in the end, they simply can't. Certainly, you could debate whether the hologram of Rimmer is an AI developed enough to have achieved consciousness and thought in the manner that a human can, but he has fundamentally been designed as an approximation of humanity. While we're on the subject, it's worth noting that the environment in which the show takes place follows the same ideology that informs its use of supporting characters. There is never a scene in the series that takes place off Red Dwarf. Of course, there is the occasional scene that occurs outside of the ship. The opening shot of each episode and the conclusion to Confidence Paranoia come to mind in this regard, but even the exterior shots are still firmly tethered and bound to the ship, which really serves to heighten the claustrophobia and isolation that defines the season's atmosphere. Blue Midget and Starbug, introduced in seasons 2 and 3 respectively, would provide some semblance of escape. But here there is absolutely none to be found, and combine that with the uniformed dullness of the ship, which in and of itself becomes a joke in Me Squared.
Paint!
But why are they painting the corridor the same colour it was before?
They're changing it from ocean grey to military grey, something that should have been done a long time ago.
Looks exactly the same to me.
No. That's the new military grey bit there, and that's the dowdy old nasty ocean grey bit there. Or is it the other way around?
And Red Dwarf could even be said to resemble some form of purgatory, an endless labyrinth of empty corridors and dark hallways. Admittedly, it is not difficult to see why some people take comfort in the unique aesthetic of these early seasons. Free reign of such a wide and sprawling ship seems like almost an appealing concept initially. But for Lister, soul of the party, the self-professed extrovert, this environment only serves to remind him of his perpetual loneliness, set adrift in deep space forever.